sisters, the Lord is with you.
And also with you.
We continue listening to God speak to us from the Gospel in the tradition of Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus' birth in Bethlehem of Judea during the reign of Herod. Astrologers would arrive one day in Jerusalem inquiring, "Where is the newborn leader of the Jews? We have observed the star at its rising, and we have come to pay homage." At this, Herod became greatly disturbed, as well as all of Jerusalem. Calling together the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they informed him, "because this is what the prophet has written. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, since from you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Herod called the astrologers aside and found out from them the exact time of the star's appearance. And he said, "Go to Bethlehem, and go and get detailed information about the child. And when you have found him, come and report to me, so I too may go and pay homage." After the audience with the ruler, they set out. The star which they had observed at its rising went ahead of them until it came to a standstill over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star. And upon entering the house, they found the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did homage. They opened their gifts and they offered presents of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another path. And this is the gospel, the good news of our salvation.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
By the words of the gospel, may our sins be blotted out.
Amen.
In Europe, the Feast of the Epiphany is Little Christmas. And this is the day that gifts are exchanged. And it really falls on the 6th of January. But after the Vatican Council wanting to be able to celebrate these various feasts on Sunday where more people are available to come to Mass, we see that the actual day of the celebration, for example, the 6th of January was being the Epiphany, now falls the Sunday after the Feast of the Holy Family, which was last week, but being the way the weeks are falling, everything is thrown out. Anyway, but that's the way we live. When you start beginning to study the history of the church, especially the saints, there's a study called hagiography. And hagiography is the study of that which is real in the life of this individual and that which is fabricated. We don't have to study religious, personal individuals to study hagiography. We find that in any hero worship. For example, in our own country. Father cannot tell a lie, I chopped down the cherry tree. George Washington. George Washington threw $1 across the Potomac. They must have been very rich to be able just to throw money away. Abe Lincoln, honest Abe, walked 3 miles one way to return 2 pennies that he overcharged a woman at the store that he was working as a young man. And so the point here is that stories and legends are attached to individuals to make them a little bit bigger, a little bit more famous. Daniel Boone killed him a bar when he was only 3. Well, I wonder how old the bear was. You get the idea. We attach these stories, and sometimes the stories become more real than the reality. And when we find that, then we find ourselves celebrating the fairy tale more than the reality. And that's when we run into problems, because if we don't have the shepherds and the wise men and the camels and then it doesn't work. The magic isn't there. The celebration doesn't take effect. Why? Because we don't have the fairy tale that surrounds the reality. Hopefully that was my message for Christmas, that sometimes we get more involved in the tapestry of Christmas, the color of the trees and the colored lights and the wreaths on the door and the colored paper and the presents and the bows under the tree and this and that, than the reality of what this feast is about. And whether it took place on December 25th, which we know it didn't, or if it took place in April sometimes, when it probably did, the birth of this individual, it doesn't matter. The fact is that God becomes man. That this person, Jesus, is born. And so today we celebrate yet another important feast in the life of the church, and that is the Epiphany. The manifestation of God, not just to the Jewish people. And it's interesting, if you read the story of Matthew, which we read today, and read it in its entirety, we find these 3 individual strangers, wise men, astrologers, whatever you want to call them, coming from the east, which was a very important direction because that's where the Messiah was going to come from, and going to, as we hear, going to Herod and asking where the newborn king of the Jews. We saw the star, that means a king has been born, and the whole 9 yards. Well, we hear how Herod is upset, and with him all of Jerusalem. Well, the word got out real quick that we're in trouble, boys. So we better start kind of figuring out how we're going to deal with this newborn king of the Jews. The wise men leave Herod's palace. They go to Bethlehem, and there they find the star. They are overwhelmed with joy. And they enter the house. Now, obviously, they've moved out of the stable. So they enter the house. Joe is out looking for a job. Maybe he went out for bagels. Who knows? But he's not there. He's not there. But the point is, the only people who are happy in this whole story, not even Mary and the baby. And Mary's overwhelmed that these people should come and bring in gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Hey, we can use that. No one is happy except the stranger. No one shows any joy at the manifestation of God made man, but these 3 foreigners. Interesting. The reason why it's interesting, and the reason why we celebrate this feast, is because of the fact that in the development of the early church, the church wanted to have people understand that this is not God's gift to the Jews, but God's gift to the world. That's why we have these strangers coming from the east, from that far off nowhere, which we don't know what's there, and they're coming to give worship to the newborn King of the Jews. Not just a newborn king, the King of the Jews. So we see that the Jewish people are kind of raised up a little bit higher on the realm of things. And these strangers coming and offering worship. And if we look at the gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, each one has a symbolic meaning to it, which you probably know. Gold for a newborn king. Incense for God. And myrrh for someone who will die. Because myrrh was the spice they anointed the body as they prepared it for burial. And so here we sit in this new year, and each one of us with our fingers and toes crossed, whatever else we can cross, hoping that this year 2021 will do away with all that we had to deal with in the year past. Maybe it will, but maybe it won't. But we're hopeful. We're hopeful because we are given, as we said in the first Sunday of Advent, a new year of grace. And so we look to the story. And again, realizing that especially when you're teaching children, all fairy tales had a moral to the story. And it is easier for a child to remember a story than facts and figures. Okay. And so it was easier for people to remember stories about these three individuals coming from the east, following a star, coming to see this newborn king, realizing that now God has expanded his love to the entire world and not just to a small group of individuals living in Palestine. The manifestation of God. We can go on and on about stories and fairy tales and morals and, like the fox walking away after not being able to get the grapes, saying bitter grapes anyway. They were probably bitter anyway. But what are we as individuals sitting here in our church and at home? What is it that we are to take away? And I use that because in my work in hospice, we always, when we had a conference, we always had to have a takeaway. What is it that you're taking away from it? What is it you learned from this? What are you going to take and use in your work? So as Christians, what is our takeaway? What are we going to do with this Feast of the Epiphany? Remember, and this is also the time then when those three strangers, Balthazar, Gaspar, and Melchior, went and blessed homes. In the East today, the priest will go around and bless the homes of the parishioners. And there was a friend of mine who was stationed, when I was stationed in Elizabeth in a parish, New Jersey. He was at a Polish parish not too far from me, and I was speaking with him. We had been in seminary together, and I said, "Oh yeah, this is a busy time of year, going around blessing homes." He said, "Yes." He said, "In fact, last year a friend of mine made so much money he went out and bought a new car." I said, "Boy, did we miss the boat." Anyway. But there are many traditions that go along with this, depending on who we are and where we're coming from. But the important thing is that God is manifesting himself in this tiny child. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux wrote, "That which the entire universe could not contain is now contained in a tiny body." The God of the universe, which the universe could not contain, is now contained in a tiny body. Heaven comes to earth. Earth is now in heaven. God is in man. Man is in God. And it throws our thinking all discombobulated because that's not the way it's supposed to be. But that's the way it is. Because that's the way God wishes it to be. So what is our takeaway? That we walk away and pat ourselves in the back because God thought we were so good that he came to visit? God came to give us instruction. God came to give us a mission. And that is that each one of us, as we celebrate the manifestation, the epiphany of the child of God in this little child, so too we now must make it an epiphany to other people that God is seen in us. That what God has done in this child Jesus is now being manifested through what I do and say, and how I live my life. And that is the only way in which God is going to be made manifest, as our song sang this morning. Otherwise, God will not be known. The days of thunder upon the mountain with lightning flashes and earthquakes are over. God does not play Cecil B. DeMille anymore. But still requires that God be made manifest, God be made known. And it must be through us. It must be the way we are going to live. That which happened in the past is in the past, and let's, all right, do away with it. Let us remember the lessons that we've learned from it, hopefully, but it's over. What are we going to do with these days ahead of us, and how are we going to make God manifest to our brothers and sisters? How are we going to make God manifest to those who do not know him, or do not believe in him, or do not care? What are we going to do? And how are we going to do it? That's our mission. And whether this virus we do away with this year or not has nothing to do with the mission that we still are on. This virus may have given us a little kick to get started to understand that we are not in control. This virus may have given us just a little push to show that we are responsible for each other by wearing a mask, by keeping socially distanced, by doing what the government is saying we need to do to stem the tide of this virus among us. Whether we believe it or not, whether we believe it's a hoax or not, that's not the point. But the point is that each one of us, regardless of whether we're wearing brown, whether we are male, whether we are female, whether we are in a relationship, whether we live alone, doesn't matter. The mission is ours to manifest God in our lives. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." That light shines on your good actions so that others might see God. Sometimes we sit back and we wonder, what does God want? How are we going to do it? Or does it matter? Does it matter that I am a good person or not? I was speaking with a priest friend of mine who I've known for 100 years, and he was the pastor of a parish that I was stationed at just before I moved to Florida. And I knew Chris for like I said, many, many years, and he took the parish, and I was the senior priest because I was older than him. But I talked to him about that God puts us where God needs us at whatever time it is in our lives. And sometimes as I've said before, when we look at a tapestry on the opposite side, it doesn't make any sense. It's only when we turn it around and begin to see the picture that we begin to see where we fit in this tapestry. And I said to him, many years after I moved down to Florida, I got a letter from a woman who thanked me for giving her direction in regards to her son. And all I did was, I said to her, the last lines I'd left her with, and she said, she quoted them back to me in this letter, allow God to work his miracle in your son's life. And she was worried because her son had come out to her as gay. And she put 2 and 2, gay, AIDS, death. She wrote me and said, because of what you said, my son is in a committed relationship and they've adopted a child, and there could not be any more love in a family that I don't see in that family. What I'm saying is not, oh, one good little boy am I. But we never know what effect we're going to have on another person when we allow God to work through us. And that's the mission of these individuals. These 3 kings, astrologers, strangers, whoever they may have been, when they went home, do you think that they kept this a secret? And if this fairy tale be true, they went home and talked about this newborn king. They proclaimed him so that others may know who and what God has done. And so today, as we celebrate yet another feast in this beautiful season of Christmas, let our little takeaway be, what is the mission that we are being sent on? As we walk through those doors, as we go home, as we turn off our computers, as we sit to have dinner with friends this afternoon maybe, or just to watch It's a Wonderful Life for the 11th time. What is the mission and how are we going to fulfill that mission? Because, my brothers and sisters, if we don't do it, it will not be done. Because it has been given us to do, no one else. And may God give us peace.